From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Josette Lafleur. Ontario has released its COVID-19 case count for the day. The province is reporting 8,825 new cases. And while the number does appear to be going down, hospitalizations and ICU admissions are on the rise. In Quebec, 2 people have died following an outbreak at a seniors' residence in Saint-Hubert near Montreal. At least 59 other residents and 39 staff members have tested positive there. The company that runs the care home says the virus likely entered through community transmission from visitors or employees. Meanwhile, Manitoba is under new restrictions today. As of this morning, all sports events, restaurants, religious services must reduce capacity to 50% or a maximum of 250 people. In the United States, people who test positive for COVID but have no symptoms can now isolate for 5 days instead of 10. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control is changing its guidance. Harvard epidemiologist Sira Medad says the change makes sense.
This is not just based on, non-science-based approach. It is based on science and data, which shows that, you can safely cut isolation periods in half if you're asymptomatic, and then you can add a test-based strategy to that.
Meanwhile, Ontario's Science Advisory Table says being double-vaxxed against COVID isn't enough to protect you from getting the new Omicron variant. 2 doses will only offer 15% protection. In England, COVID infections are surging, but the government has decided not to bring in more pandemic restrictions. Instead, it says it will watch hospitalizations carefully. Dominic Velitis has more.
England's hospitality sector has welcomed the government's decision not to introduce new COVID restrictions. Industry leaders have described the move as a lifeline for the country's pubs, bars and restaurants, which were badly hit in the run-up to Christmas due to mass cancellations over fears about the Omicron variant. Reaction among scientists and experts, though, has been mixed. Some say it makes sense, as the current data shows very low numbers of vaccinated people are in intensive care. But there's still concern about the impact soaring infection rates will have on hospitals and schools, with staff having to self-isolate after testing positive. As a result, some scientists are more cautious, with one of the government's own advisers saying ministers appear to be acting on the optimistic end of the spectrum. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, London.
Physicians in India say the country will need more doctors to fight COVID-19 if the situation worsens. Hundreds of doctors rallied in the capital today, protesting a delay in admissions for postgraduate students wanting to attend medical colleges. A key exam scheduled to be held last January was postponed until September, and now admissions counseling has been put on pause, which has resulted in a shortage of about 45,000 frontline physicians. Doctors are threatening mass resignation if admissions don't resume and they don't get reinforcements soon. That's China's foreign ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian, accusing the United States of not behaving responsibly in outer space. Beijing says its space station has had 2 close encounters with Starlink satellites put into orbit by Elon Musk's satellite internet company. China has filed a formal complaint with the United Nations Space Agency, and Musk is facing significant backlash on Chinese social media.
Welcome to the Rock. If you come from away, you probably understand about half of what we say.
The Tony Award-winning play Come From Away has shut down its Toronto shows for good. The production had just reopened on December 15th, but in only 7 days, the Omicron variant drew the curtain on the award-winning musical. Producer David Mervish blames the spread of the virus and the lack of government support for live theatre during the pandemic. And that is The World This Hour. For CBC News, I'm Josette Lafleur.
Where the river meets the sea.
This is a regional update from the CBC Newsroom in Vancouver. Good morning, I'm Drew Karakis. BC has once again set a new single-day record for COVID-19 cases. For the 24-hour period between Friday and Saturday, that number was 2,552. For the 3-day period over the weekend, there were 6,288 new infections. The rolling average of new cases suggests the Fraser Health region has twice the number of infections compared to that in the Vancouver Coastal Health region. Provincial Provincial officials did not release the number of new hospitalizations or deaths over the 3-day period. The RCMP are investigating a homicide in the community of 70 Mile House in the Caribou region. A 52-year-old man was found critically injured inside a home on Sunday morning. Despite attempts to save his life, the victim died at the scene. The RCMP say a 62-year-old man who was known to the victim was questioned in the case and later released. Investigators believe it was an isolated incident, adding there's no risk to the public. Environment Canada says Arctic outflow and extreme cold warnings remain in effect for many regions of BC. Wind chill values in Metro Vancouver have been near -20 this morning. In parts of the central interior, it could feel like -40 with the wind chill. Yesterday, there were 21 record low temperatures in locations around the province, including in Quesnel, where it hit -38.9 degrees. You're listening to CBC Radio 1 in British Columbia.
Good morning, I'm Stephen Quinn in Vancouver, and this is The Bright Side. And as the year draws to a close, we're taking some time to reflect on the Canadian moments and people who have made us smile over the past 12 months, even when they themselves were going through exactly the same thing. Well, how fitting for 2021 that a beloved, heartwarming family show should end in controversy. Kim's Convenience aired its last episode in April, and the goodbye was sweet, but also sad and complicated. As complicated as the rest of the year we've just lived. And here to delve into this is the man you know as Appa, the forthright, well-meaning patriarch of the Kim family. Actor Paul Sun-Hyung Lee joins us now. Hello.
Good morning.
A lot of good things we've had this year have been tinged with, I suppose, a hint of sadness or poignancy. And I know the way that this show ended was bittersweet for you and for the other cast members. I don't know, maybe a lot more bitter than sweet. And you said at the time that you felt that it came out of nowhere. How do you feel about how things went down as you look back on this a few months later?
Well, you know, with time comes perspective. And it's one of those unfortunate instances where it really truly is a very complicated situation. And there's no one sort of culprit you can blame for all of this. There is no blame. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people might have their own opinions of it. I have my opinions on it, but I don't know the full story. I know my side of the story and I know what I've heard from other things. But at the end of the day, truly, what I want to focus on is all the good stuff that Kim's Convenience did in terms of breaking barriers, in terms of representation on the screens, in terms of telling heartwarming, authentic stories about an immigrant family that otherwise never would have had a voice, and how it represented a lot of communities, not just the Korean Canadian community, but a lot of immigrant communities out there, because we found a common ground with a lot of people all over the world. And those are the things that I really want to focus on. I think, was the show perfect in terms of how it was run? Absolutely not. But we did as best as we could. I think mistakes were made. And I think for the industry to learn and to grow so that these mistakes don't happen again, we need to have courteous discourse, really good critical thinking, an analysis and a breaking down and a separation of emotion from it, because it was a very emotional thing. And I was super emotional back at, when the news broke. Mm-hmm. Because it just felt so sudden. Although, the writing had been on the wall for a little bit, looking back at it, you see some of the telltale signs. But that being said, I have nothing but fond memories of that show. Did it end the way I wanted it to? Absolutely not. But like all good things, they do come to an end. And I choose to carry the positivity of what I was able to create, the atmosphere, the relationships I made on that show, and continue to use that as a launching point for what I want to do with my career, with my life from this moment forward. There's no point in dwelling in the past.
This show has been has been a big part of just a hugely important time for Asian Canadian representation, though.
I understand that completely, but it shouldn't be the be all and the end all. There are other shows that can be made, other voices that can be heard. I mean, just because Kim's ends doesn't mean, well, that's it, no more Asian stories. Absolutely not. I mean, even in CBC, Andrew Fung, Run the Burbs.
Yeah.